Bruce, can you hear us? Hello.
Now I've got you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to have you on our conference live stream, and it's very important for our audience that people from other parts of the world connecting to speak how to enter your local markets and give some recommendations. And people like you are known, known, and I believe that you'll be even more known in different regions, like for example Russia, where we right now do a global conference with High School of Economics and the Institute of Legal Management. So the audience is willing to learn about how to enter the Australian market and get some recommendation and tips from you about that. And if you would give some advice about importance of law and how to apply it into the business from your practical perspective is also appreciated. And I would also encourage you tell us a little bit about your community MindHive, so people from our audience could join it as well. So the floor is yours. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Daniil. Daniil, I just missed that. You just gave me one important point there, which is you were interested in hearing about, and it just dropped out. So I'm going to ask you just to say that one, the last word again.
Yeah, two things. We would like to learn how to enter the Australian market.
Yes.
And second, your thoughts of importance of legal law practices applying to business. So like, why would law be important applying to business from your practical perspective? Because this is a conference with Institute of Legal Management, and the students are studying law. And so if you would give some practical cases or share some practical thoughts of importance of law in business, I'd be highly appreciated as well.
Okay, I'll definitely have a go, but I'm just a humble old tennis player who's now running a startup. So I'll bring in my best advice on the legal and the law, and particularly in regards we as a startup. I'll frame out of what I talk about in terms of the startup.
Yeah, in terms of the startup is great. Yeah. So the main topic is how to enter the Australian market, anyways.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Daniil, and I'm looking forward to spending some time. And then obviously I've been doing the beauty of the current environment that we're in is that you sort of are speaking in lots of different countries around the world all within a day. So we've been very excited recently to be, last week we were talking at the United Nations General Assembly with Erasmus was running a group there. And we were talking a lot about areas that we're passionate about around collective intelligence. And today and tomorrow we're talking with you, and we're very humbled by the opportunity to do that, as well as in Singapore. And it seems to me there's a certain track here is about how we can become more globally orientated with our work. I used to travel in a plane pretty much every second day of my life. I would go for dinner in Johannesburg and come home after dinner on the same flight back to Australia, drop in at various spots to the west coast of America is very close to us, just 14 hours away. I haven't been to Russia yet, but spent quite a lot of time in Europe and London. But I feel like I've become actually more international by not traveling, by sitting in this room here 2 or 3 days a week in my office. It's been a tremendous shift towards a global village, I guess you'd say. As Daniil said, my name is Bruce Muirhead. It's an opportunity for me to share a little bit about the work I'm doing. And in so doing, I'll talk to you about some of the legals about coming into both this country and that we're involved in. Australia is a great, I mean, I'll be a promoter of Australia, particularly Queensland. So Australia is 8 states and territories. Those of you who don't know it, we're currently all boarded up with COVID. So politically, we've found that each state and territory is boarded up, trying to reduce COVID spread. Interestingly, I live in a state, Queensland, that currently, touch wood, is very fortunate not to have any COVID cases entering in at this stage. But it has brought a very one nation has actually been broken up quite a lot by these border closures. One of the most important things, though, is that we have Slack, which brings together a huge number, some 1,000 to 1,500 innovators across the country. And those innovators that we are really are critical to our future success of the Australia as we progress through COVID. Some of you may know the company Atlassian, which is a large, probably our largest tech company. Aside of Atlassian, we have another company called Canva. These are unicorn companies in Australia that are coming out. It's quite interesting in terms of the tech culture, the startup culture in Australia. We've been quite successful during COVID in a couple of key areas, and one of those is crowdsourcing. In Australia, we have companies like 99 Design, Freelance, and Airtasker. Those are 3 really good examples of companies that have established themselves on 99 Designs as crowdsourcing designs. Freelancer is crowdsourcing consultants, and Airtasker is taskers, people who are willing to. I have someone who helps me fix up the yard, mow the lawn, and those sorts of things. Who I got through Airtasker, and Airtasker has been a great example of almost cloud task stuff, and giving people new opportunities. Those companies are global. We haven't become unicorns. We believe company Clipchamp out of Brisbane, Queensland, where you can edit film in real time online in the cloud. We predict that is probably one of the next unicorns that comes through. We have quite a lot of fintechs. So the chair of my company, chair of Zinja, which is one of 3 or 4 online banks. And so we have that instance. Our tech is probably one of our fastest growing as well. So I'm part of a group of Australian innovators called the Australian Innovation Community. There's probably 1,300 people who participate in that in terms of energy, clean tech, basically data security, cyber security. We have a very significant amount of work taking place nationally in what we'd call ag tech and energy tech, clean tech. So Australia is by nature, hopefully those of you who don't know Australia, the picture of Australia is a smallish country with a high level of innovation and a very global footprint. And we pride ourselves on optimism and on bringing products to the market that match market need. And we have a very strong, one of our clients in my company is Austrade. Austrade does all the globalization of our IP products and the commercialization of our products globally as a government department. And Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, who again, those of you who would be looking to expand into Australia, those 2 departments are critical. So that's Austrade, AUSTRADE. And if you'd like connections into that, they're a client of my companies, and we've got really good connections right through to the executive. And the same with Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And those 2 companies are responsible at the government level for bringing together both engaging Australian innovation with the world, and also would be a key point of contact for considering being in Australia as an innovation founder or an entrepreneur. To place where I sit, I'm in crowdsourcing too, and we're creating what we'd sort of say is a connector between problem owners and problem solvers. And those problem owners and problem solvers are a two-sided marketplace. So we would, if you had to have a comparison as to what we might look like, our business model is not dissimilar to Airbnb, where there's spare bedrooms in people's houses that they make available for travelers. There is spare capacity for problem solving in the community on Earth, whether that be consultants, academics, researchers, government leaders, citizens, but there's a spare spot where people are willing to give their ideas and solutions to problems. And so we've created a platform that harnesses, that throws a net out and allows a marketplace to exist between problem owners and problem solvers. And we believe that sometimes ideas come from the strangest places. So pre this tech revolution we're experiencing right now, we probably had older problem solving methods, which were more linear, more step by step. We're now looking at a problem solving strategy which is more non-linear and more able to be the unusual suspects solving the old problems. So we've done a lot of work around commercializing our company's IP, technology, and so forth. Things that we've sort of learnt along the way, which might be helpful, is particularly, I guess, there's some incentives to come to Australia, to be in Australia, and we have a couple of legal frameworks that enable startups in Australia. Two very important ones are, there's a program around research and development tax as a model. So if you're an innovation company undertaking research and development, you've got a huge opportunity to claim tax benefits on your company to execute your innovation. So we have been recipients of research and development tax each year that we've been operating. It's actually kept us going in these early angel sort of periods, early stage venture. We are building an algorithm called a wildcard algorithm, which match makes the unusual suspect who can potentially solve your problem with the problem owner. We've found there's a great story I can share with you. For example, with the technology of predictive health through wristbands, General Electric put out a call for problem solvers to come together to find an algorithm that could predict a heart attack and then tell the recipient of the heart attack, and they're mainly 50-year-old plus men, that they would get a text message letting them know that they were about to experience a heart attack in the next few hours. Who could create an algorithm for them? What outcome happened there was that instead of who you'd expect, which might be health data experts, health algorithm experts, universities, consulting houses, it was actually two young hedge funders in New York who sort of adapted financial modeling and algorithms to match health modeling algorithms. It's one of hundreds of stories of just an unusual problem solver being brought to the table by a problem owner putting it out there. And you see XPRIZE, you see a whole bunch of platforms that are rising up saying there's a new way to solve problems. So we've spent quite a bit of time in experiments, and in Australia, one of the first legal frameworks we are given, particularly around our tax environment, is that we are able to receive quite a significant amount of tax benefits on revenue and expenditure for the company and investment and so forth. Another benefit in Australia in terms of from potentially considering doing work in Australia is we have an early stage incentives scheme, and it's by acronym is ETIC. You receive a 20% tax rebate for investors in your company. So it's quite attractive. My investment community accesses that, and it helps early stage companies benefit from that. Those early days where investors have to take a bit of a risk with you, there's a softening of that risk by offering a early stage investment benefit of 20% tax reduction on your investment. In terms of how we work, in terms of the commercialisation processes within Australia, we've tended to work, we have a very significant amount of support provided again by government with programs like accelerating commercialisation, which is millions and millions of dollars get spent on assisting, coaching, mentoring and investing in the commercialisation of your IP. And so an example would be Clipchamp, which will be, we believe, a future unicorn. It began its early days in Australia with a significant support from accelerating commercialisation. Structurally, we work with one of the big four legal firms here in Australia, Minter Ellison. We've been spending the last 2 days with them. Startups, by nature of their sustainability, are always looking at new ways to generate revenue and income. And just a case study of the last week or so in our life as a startup here, we're doing a crowdfunding, a national crowdfunding exercise where we're hoping to raise a couple of $1 million by giving small investment opportunities for individuals and citizens who would like to have a stake in our company. So we're working with a company called Birchal, BIRCHAL. They're one of 2 or 3 crowdfunding platforms that exist in Australia. With Minter Ellison, we've been working around how does a company like ours take on potentially thousands of investors. So traditionally our structure has been, our constitution and shareholder deed has been specifically focused on some, probably, I think about up to 20 investors. Where we see great advantage as a company, which is an ecosystem of about 60,000 subscribers and members, we see great benefit within this type of case study of a legal position. We see great benefit with bringing together our ecosystem, our community, in having investment in the company that they're part of. It's a tremendous opportunity to get buy-in. It builds activity in the company, engagement and stickiness. And so we're very excited. We've been going just a couple of days on our fundraise, on our crowd fundraise, and we've had significant interest and expressions of interest already. We have a few weeks of expressions of interest just to check the appetite for investment. And so structurally, we're working with our legal firm, Minter Ellison, on readjusting our shareholder deeds, our constitution, which is no small feat when you've already got existing shareholders, about how you structure a startup to have significant investment from many people with small amounts, and how we can do that without being overwhelmed by, for example, communication to shareholders, document access by shareholders, and how we can balance the potential of maybe tens of thousands of investors with the legal structure which enables entrepreneurialism to take place, as well as accountability and good governance and so forth. There's some things I'll just throw out there, Danielle, and maybe it's an opportunity just if there's any questions from the team. it might be useful to expand on some of those stories or add more in. So.
Yeah, there are questions, a couple of questions we have from the students. First of all, great insights. I really appreciate all this information. First question is if you could elaborate, and you may repeat a few things about how, I'm reading this question, how does the state participate in the creation of the startup ecosystem in Australia?
So how does the state contribute to the establishment of the ecosystem?
Startup ecosystem in Australia.
It's a very active. So we've had we have prime ministers. So we've had a number of prime ministers who've seen innovation as a pillar to the future of Australia. The state incentivizes, as I gave an example before, the state incentivizes innovation through tax benefits for investors, tax benefits for their startups. They also, and more recently, as of yesterday, we had a budget announcement. One is that we're about $200 billion in debt post-COVID, and life is not looking that great.
Yeah.
On the other side, they're trying to work out, well, how do we keep jobs? So they're making a very significant, I'm just learning about this myself, but they're making a very significant investment in funding blockchain startups. So there's a particular, they take a focus on agricultural technology. So for those of the students who know Australia, most of our country is desert, and most of that country could probably be a food bowl. It could be rethought. So we're looking at robotic farms. So we're being quite inventive on that ag tech side. We're also, as I said, the fintech side, but the government uses the tax system as a way of incentivizing innovation. They also have a fairly, they're very consistently on both sides of government. We have like a Democrat, Republican, but we call them Labor, Liberal. They have they all follow what would be a significant. I guess you always want there's a significant one particular focus on cybersecurity. So you'll see a lot of startups coming up out of Australia which have a particular focus on cybersecurity. And those ones, they have an arm of government or an investment in government called the CSIRO. And CSIRO actually invented wireless technology. So at this stage, quite a significant amount of investments going into blockchain, AI, and cybersecurity. And my gut feel will be that they are all aligned to concerns for being in our region. So our relationship with China, our relationship within this region. We have a long-standing engagement with our Pacific Islands. And so themes that match government policy will always be there. And I guess the other one is, it's unusual, but in Australia, our fourth biggest export is education. And so there's a great interest in online education and taking, no longer does it have to be just our local University of Moscow or University of Queensland. There's this whole new world rapidly increasing, which is how can we maintain our fourth largest export in an environment where you don't actually have to go to the campus as much anymore and so forth. So, but that's a broad array, but at a high level, the federal government on both sides fund and encourage and incentivize innovations.
That's impressive how you guys support your ecosystem with that, and it's yeah. I think that would be a good stimulus for international startups to come to Australia and do business from Australia internationally, or work with Australian companies. There is another question from my colleague Georg. Georg, please let us know your question.
Yeah. So the question is from the audience: being consulting, how students, do you have any fast tracks or maybe internship? And the question from me, how do you see, maybe you talked briefly about the role of the university, but maybe you can elaborate more. How do you see this? What place does the university in a new emerging startup ecosystem? Maybe not only in Australia, maybe you have some insights regarding different jurisdictions, but just, it will be nice.
Yeah, great questions. Can I have about 2 hours to answer them?
You can have as much time as you want.
we have a time. We have a time up to 4 o'clock.
You can always edit this, can't you? But no, I think I spent a decade or so working within universities, so I got to know them well. And they're kind of what I'd call a superpower. They're like an airport. You know, you go to any airport on earth and it's the same. It smells the same crappy music, but beautiful architecture. If you go to a university around the world, they all feel the same. Like, I love going to the University of Stanford. I actually love going to universities more so just to walk around them. You know, they've all got character, but they're all kind of, and I call it a superpower. And theoretically it's called a superpower. And then there's a concept of folk power almost, which is the local and so forth. I think there's just this huge opportunity for universities to rethink themselves, to be connected. So there's a one part of this, which is, I think when I spoke to one of the team at yours at the university, we were talking about students in China, San Francisco, and in Moscow, and this connectivity between these common sites. There's just this huge. If you step back, you can easily think about creating a global brain of students. You know, right now students exist all in these patches, but and it's more than just going beyond Zoom or, you know, there's an actual capacity, there's an opportunity for the future of universities to restructure themselves to be learning in the real-time process of solving problems. And so if you sort of think about this notion of collective intelligence, the freshest, the newest, the most disruptive, the most annoying ideas come from students in universities who are really, you know, they're testing ideas, they're banging heads, they're debating, they're arguing. And in fact, we probably around the world want to increase that noise of students intellectually. There's probably been a culture of students, a bit of a silencing, but there's this real great ability and really great opportunity for platforms to connect the minds of students, not just within Moscow, not just in Brisbane, but in this sort of interconnected way. But the curriculum in universities, if you say the 3 core reasons you have a university, the whole birth of a university was to contribute to its local economy and its community. I mean, that's just the mission of the university, the community service side of it. But then there's research, and then there's teaching and learning. So if typically you talk about a university having a service to its local community, its city, and that's globally, all do. It's the airport model, all of them do that. And all of them do that in some do it great, some do it not so great, some sort of use a different, you know, don't do great at all, probably. Then there's research, which we all compete on. And then there's teaching and learning. But just imagine if you could connect teaching and learning and action research in the process of of learning on real world problems. So right now we have COVID. There's a problem there that's not just health, it's economic, it's mental health, it's physical health. Imagine bringing a bigger brain to it by being able to connect those emerging ideas and evidence-based ideas, but make it part of learning. So what I believe you're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years for university relevance, starting to see it a little bit with Singularity University, examples like that coming out. But universities, people want to be part of something with purpose. People want to be part of something where they're learning, communities of practice, and people want to be part of things which is actually bringing new knowledge, research into the world. And so, you know, Singularity is a little bit in front of people in some ways. It's probably not grabbed the traditional market, but so I think there's a huge opportunity in the future of universities to center the core of their activity, service, teaching and learning and research, around solving real world problems. And I think the emerging generations will do that. My company is obsessed with those sorts of discussions. So we wake up in the morning, we just want to talk about it again, then we go to sleep. I'm talking about it. It's 8 o'clock at night and I'm here at home. I've just been all day on the phone, all on Zooms. It's the future for us is, if there's 7 billion people on Earth and increasingly we're connected, the faster we can get to problem solving with a broader perspective of diverse ideas. So what keeps me up at night is how can we, in practice, put collective intelligence into the university system. How we've done that practically is we've brought 400 business students together in a university to collectively work with problems with industries. And so, like like dating sites, matchmaking a date, industries have problems, students need to find problems and solve them. Platforms like MindHive, there's plenty of them. Those platforms need to, in many ways, get into universities and enable students in business faculties. I have 5 at the moment working in MindHive. And those students are working on onboarding Deloitte, on working with American Express, on a whole variety of global companies, and they're in there working and solving problems. So really practically, if you have these platforms, you enable independence of students to participate in problem solving with future employers and clients and so forth, and future investors in the university. So the university's self-interest should be how many thousands of businesses want to join our platform to put up problems that enable our students to, in real time, solve problems, then turn that into learning, teaching, research. Okay, I'll stop.
Yeah, I myself, as a vice director of an institute inside the much larger structure, High School of Economics. I understand what you are talking about, and I really liked your analogy with the airport, airport model.
We're all a bit the same, aren't we?
Yeah. This is, we like to call it the railway station.
Yeah.
You talked about the airport, so I hope we'll meet someday at our airport. We'll be glad to have you here, and thank you so very much for your insights.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. And make sure...
Yeah, we have a couple more questions just to guys.
Sorry, Dino, I just say make sure you make the most of third party. I know, and hopefully, when I worked in universities, sometimes there are bureaucracies that are slow to change and slow to get. Yeah. If you can use third party innovators, you de-risk it and you enable that university to stay like that. But I just encourage you, there's a heap of startups in this space, and it'd just be so exciting for a university to embrace them and let them test ideas and all those, and more than happy to put ours into the pot and be a part of a test. But I just think universities sometimes end up being a bit staying in that slow thinking rather than letting innovation pop. But anyway, I won't go on. But thank you very much for hosting me.
Yeah, we have a few more questions if you don't mind. There is another question from the live stream we have. I posted this also in Zoom chat, so you can read it, but I will read it out loud. So in case my connection drops, you can see it as well. From Guis Borisovich, thank you for your talk. To bring the number of investors you are talking about, why did you choose to develop a complicated shareholder structure rather than use an STO security token offering?
How do I pronounce his name? I'm sorry, Daniel.
Jewish. It's hard to read. Just
Jewish. I wished I'd met Jewish earlier. Yeah, I wished I'd met Jewish earlier. I'd need to learn a little bit about a security token offering, and whether that's something which I can take on board and understand whether in Australia we have. Let me just quickly check on that while I'm talking with you. Whether we have that as a we've chosen where it's not. I guess we haven't seen it as complicated. It'd be nice to be able to talk to Jewis about the complicated shareholder structure. It's relatively traditional, but crowdfunding exists. You have access to crowdfunding as well? Is that?
In Russia, we do have a couple of crowdfunding platforms, but also we have access to international ones. And this person said that his name is James.
James, okay. Okay, let me, so blockchain. One of the issues we have in here, I'll just share a little bit here with them. Where there's a bit of a cautiousness at times with cryptocurrency and blockchain. But I'll do some thinking on that. I'll share this with James as well in the chat. But more than happy to sort of engage in that conversation. But we've tended to, it's interesting, my chair is the chair of a neurobank. And one of the issues is that she can't participate in anything with cryptocurrency at the moment. But I'd need to understand, I'm sorry to know a little bit more about security token offerings. I'm confident that if James is talking about this, then we'll probably be doing that in the next year or two.
That's amazing.
He's probably ahead of us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That would be excellent. That after some conversation, some audience giving advice to the speaker as well. Like it's just great.
No, it's the way it should be. So
yeah, and this is the power of like international communication and network. I have a few more questions if you don't mind.
For sure.
One of the person is interested about legal tech in Australia. For example, like, are there any automated systems to do some legal services, like, for example, Clerky in United States, where you can just go on the website and open your company, do a bank account, and many other services? Could people from outside Australia go on some website services just to do the same thing and operate business online from outside the country?
I'm confident you could. And again, in terms of the mechanics of how that would happen, I can share that again with this person in terms of how best to do that. But I'm sure we have companies establishing themselves in Australia all the time. And in fact, it's encouraged. It's interesting, you know, it's quite competitive to get companies. We're not, those of you who've been to LA and San Francisco, every time I go there, that LA is trying to get you to go to Silicon Beach, and San Francisco wants you actually in Silicon Valley. So globally, we've set up systems to attract talent and so forth. Probably the best country on earth that I've seen that happen is Estonia, and in Tallinn. We've had a number of Australians have gone to live in Estonia on the basis of the variety of incentives there. So again, Danila, what I'll do is I'll share with you, I'll take some questions on notice and then share with you some of the links through to how to set up the business in Australia. The best sites to go to for that person is DFAT, D-F-A-T. That's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And if that person is actually personally interested, I can introduce them. We've had DFAT as a client for a number of years over the years. So I'm more than happy to do an introduction, but also if they search around a little bit, it's certainly Australia's encouraging. We have a visa at the moment that's just been introduced. I think there's a look. I think Australia's interested with Hong Kong, people picking Australia to live in, and then also in America, there's a visa that's just to bring to active entrepreneurs to Australia. So we'll have the systems that I can share. So after this, maybe if you email me or I can just work with you, I'll send them to you and then you can share.
Absolutely. Please send it over to me. I just shared here in the chat for you our global chats where you can post the same information and connect with our global audience.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, you just feel free to interact with people. So they might be interested also in MindHive community, and that would be a great connection. Another question I have, I'm reading, the importance of the power of network. So can you speak about the importance of the power of network and how international connections can help you go global? So how actually to build your own international network and how to use it to go global, in your opinion?
It's a question you probably, every time you look at your strategic plan, you ask, and I'm sure you do too. It's a evolving learning. I've actually just finished another great book. There's a lot of airport books where you buy a book in an airport and read it on the next trip. And there's quite a few around tribes and ecosystems and so forth. Probably the number one book that I'd share with people is Spider and Starfish. And Spider and Starfish is a great book. It's a fairly old book now, but it talks about the power of networks. And probably 15 years ago, I met a fellow in our mall in the city who was the chief of staff to a minister, who said that the power, we were dependent on funding and all these sorts of things. We decided to build a network of networks by looking at a common issue. And how we've done, it's not dissimilar to how you've done it, Daniil, which is we've found that over time champions arrive who actually get committed to the same cause. So our cause is simply that there's a better way to find answers, and that's collective intelligence. This idea of a few people, a few experts sitting in a room getting paid too much by whether it's a consulting firm or in a university, the expectation of researchers and scholars. So we know that even through Google search, the keyword collective intelligence is moving very quickly to becoming more mainstream. But the network of networks model for us is to build out basically communities of interest and build two-sided marketplaces. So in MindHive, for example, we have what we'd say is our drivers and riders. We have people who want to learn and people who teach and consult and provide answers. So you've got a very good marketplace where people can receive a few different personal benefits. Most humans in most of our community want to network with other smart people. They want to get profile and stay relevant, and they want to make money. And so they sort of, those three things drive self-interest, and self-interest drives collaboration. So we've talked about, do you need to set up do you need to set up offices in other countries? We've decided at this stage, we've been approached by India, whether they could look at having a MindHive India just for the country. We've been approached by a global Big Four company. Can we just have MindHive just for our company? But our ambition is to actually have a global collective intelligence platform. And so you often, as Daniil, you'd realize you get challenged by potential sidetracking ideas, which would turn us into an idea management software company where we build software for companies, which is a cool thing to do. But we want to be better than Facebook type of thing. We think that authenticity, we think LinkedIn is about how many certificates have you got, it's not really, if you went to a LinkedIn dinner party, it wouldn't be that interesting. We want to create a really interesting dinner party of a mixed, diverse group of people. And so we're really looking for a central element of curious people, not so much a professional networking and recruitment site. So if you looked at what's at the heart of MindHive, it's those people who are curious and those people who are looking to contribute. So it's an ecosystem with a common value system. We're we talk about 3 elements. We're abundant thinkers. We're achievement orientated. Our goal is always to be altruistic with our time as well. So we have 3 A's, and so build a culture, find the champions in each country. We're raising a couple of $1 million. I could send you our clip. It's very cool. We filmed it up at the beach. In terms of the story of MindHive, I'll send it to you anyway to share. But we just finished filming, and it's only a few minutes. But the biggest thing is that we think that it's about 150 countries, and I think, Daniil, we're not dissimilar. You're talking about an ecosystem of innovation, and innovators and entrepreneurs and learning communities, and so I think there could be a number of these in different ways. You can belong to many tribes, and so for that person, I think it's more finding the core reason and the problem, I guess, and building platforms in this case which are intuitive, nice, fun to be in, and so forth. So I'm not sure, that was a bit of a scrappy answer, but hopefully it touched.
No, it's actually a great answer, and I completely agree. In my opinion, the power of network is highly important for any businesses and for any person who would like to succeed in whether it's a career approach or you want to build your own business. But the network is opening you doors, and also gives you expertise, knowledge, and opportunities. And the sooner you start building your own network, in my opinion, the better, the stronger your network will be. But building the network is also not only taking from the network, it's also giving back to the network. And what you are doing at MindHive is absolutely amazing as well. On this note, like, I would just, since you touched on MindHive, what would be the major description of MindHive you would like to share with the audience, and how people would be able to join your community that you're building in Australia?
I think it's an opportunity. Like, I'll just say one thing. I'm a little bit older than you, and one of the things that you're doing, which is really impressive, is you're taking, I call it a long game. Building an ecosystem or a community is not something you do and then it's done, and then there's 60,000 people within our communities. That's probably been 20 years of dinners, face-to-face, and building trust. And you and I have met through a trusted friend, and that what's that book, Speed of Trust? So I wouldn't go into building ecosystem and networks unless it was a medium long-term strategy. I think that the benefit here for me, in terms of with MindHive, if people within the community want to join, and I'm particularly interested in the university engagement too. I think there's a huge opportunity, as I said to George, this idea of connecting real-time learning and partnerships that matter, make you get more engaged. If it matters to you, if you're self-interested with a problem, it's good because you actually collaborate better. But no, I'll just be saying to people, if you're interested in joining a curious community that talks about interesting things, and the difference with MindHive is it's kind of like Quora and Reddit, but it's actually produces outcomes. So it's not just Q&A and then snap. So it's probably, I use a dinner party metaphor. It's probably like a really good dinner party where you have interesting conversation at the beginning and it's a bit light. And then by the time you're having dessert, you're into the big dish, you're talking about, the real issues. And then by the time you're saying goodbye at the end of the night, you've actually formed new connections and friendships. And so it's a little bit different to that sort of instant chat talk or Slack or what's good is my new product head's written a little bit about that on the front at the at the, he's redesigned the website to tell some of those stories, but I'll share with you probably the best description we've done of MindHive so far is just a film we produced just a few minutes. But the outcome of joining MindHive for any of your communities, that they can have it for free. It's a partnership agreement sort of with you as a informal engagement. We can help each other grow. And so if people want to use it for teaching and learning, you can have students, you could have a class of students working on a project and sharing ideas together. You can have it for looking for a job. Right now, we're trying to solve how do you get a job post-COVID. We were in probably the #1 newspaper today. I wrote a story about it. So we're kind of sexy in the new tech world at the moment. This is the type of idea of remote collaboration. We're all any tech that's doing remote collaboration. So it can be used across multiple areas, but we're a curious community. We're at the end of the day, we're trying to work out how to better find answers to the challenges we've got, and that might be the questions that I've been asked tonight could all be put up on MindHive. How do you build it? How do you build out an ecosystem globally? How could we use security token offerings to reduce complex shareholder structures? I mean, if we put those up, you'd get a few hundred people jump in and give ideas. And you get a little bit of a name for asking cool questions. You know, when you're at a dinner party and someone's asks a cool question, you get that type of thing. It's like people want to talk about it a bit more. So. But thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been a tremendous.
Yeah, I think we're ready to wrap it up. Georg, there are no more questions for us.
Thanks.
Right? Yeah. So Bruce, thank you
right.
so much for your time. It's been amazing to hear all your insights and recommendation about Australian market and learn more about your community. I'm sure the audience will be interested to connect with your community, and we'll be sharing all the information. On the last note, what would be your final closing statement and probably some inspirational closing things you would like to share with the
You're making this hard. It's been about a 14-hour day, you know.
Say again?
You're making this hard. It's been about a 14-hour day so far. So I have to be inspirational right at the end. No, I think again, it's just, I said this to some people last week, it's just find your passion and chase down the passion. There's great I'm a bit of the optimist side, which is in a difficult time like now, there's great opportunities for us to rethink how we can connect and how we can do. I believe in connecting people for good is probably the very basic thing. And if we can more and more connect people for good, and that might be in various ways. For us, it's about connecting good ideas to problems. But if we can think about how we can connect better together for good, then to me is that's what drives me. And so everything else follows. The tech almost becomes secondary. The passion and the desire to have a better world is what drives us. So if we can answer questions which have been considered to be unsolvable, that might be issues to do with health in communities, aging populations, our own families. If we can just bring better and faster and more interesting voices to the problems that matter to you and I, then that's the contribution we make to making the world a better place.
And that was Bruce Muirhead, the founder and the CEO of MindHive community in Australia. Bruce, thank you again so much for joining us today, and have the rest of your evening. Have a great one.
Thanks, Neil. And good. Could I just say, great work. Keep up all the good work, man. Cheers, then.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.